It was a chilly November evening in New York City, and James Carter, a decorated Army veteran, stood on the corner of 34th Street. James was tall and muscular, with a sharp jawline and eyes that carried stories most wouldn't understand. His Army uniform, neatly pressed, reflected his years of discipline and service. He had just attended a ceremony honoring veterans, where he had been invited as a guest speaker. The event had gone well, but now, as the cold wind brushed against his face, he was ready to get home. James raised his hand to hail a taxi. The streets were busy as always, with the sound of honking horns and the chatter of pedestrians filling the air. The first cab that approached slowed down for a moment. James thought the driver was going to stop, but then the car sped off. He frowned, adjusting his bag on his shoulder. Maybe he didn't see me in time, James thought to himself, giving the benefit of the doubt. Another taxi approached, its yellow paint gleaming under the streetlights. James raised his hand again, this time waving to ensure the driver noticed him. The car slowed, but as the driver caught a glimpse of James's face, his expression changed. Without stopping, the driver accelerated and drove away. A sinking feeling settled in James's chest. This wasn't the first time he'd experienced something like this. Growing up as a black man in the South, he had faced his share of prejudice. But tonight, dressed in his Army uniform, a symbol of his service and sacrifice, it stung differently. He took a deep breath and tried again. Taxi after taxi either ignored him or slowed down only to speed away. Nearby, a middle-aged white man in a business suit raised his hand for a taxi. Almost instantly, one pulled over. James watched in silence as the man got in and the cab drove off. He clenched his fists, but quickly released them. He had learned long ago that anger wouldn't solve anything. A woman walking by noticed James standing there. Her name was Clara Johnson, a local journalist. She hesitated for a moment before approaching him. "Excuse me," Clara said, her voice soft but curious. "Are you having trouble finding a cab?" James turned to her, his face calm but his eyes weary. "Looks like it," he said simply. Clara glanced at the line of taxis speeding by. "I've been standing here for a few minutes and I couldn't help but notice. They're not stopping for you, are they?" James shrugged. "It's nothing new." Clara frowned. "That's not right, especially not when you're in uniform." James gave a small smile. "The uniform doesn't change much for some people." Clara was quiet for a moment, then pulled out her phone. "Would you mind if I recorded this? People need to see what's happening." James hesitated. He wasn't the type to seek attention, but something about Clara's determination struck a chord with him. "If you think it'll make a difference, go ahead." For the next 20 minutes, Clara recorded as taxi after taxi passed James by. She even tried hailing one herself to show the contrast. Every time she raised her hand, a cab stopped almost immediately. But when James tried, the response was always the same: silence or rejection. By the end of the ordeal, James's expression was stoic, but Clara could see the pain in his eyes. She thanked him for letting her document the experiences and promised to share the story widely. As James finally managed to get a ride through a ride-sharing app, he couldn't shake the feeling that this night was far from over. Little did he know, the events of that evening would spark a movement that would change lives and minds forever. The next morning, James woke up to dozens of messages and missed calls. His phone buzzed incessantly as notifications poured in. Confused, he unlocked the screen and saw a message from Clara. "James, the video went viral. People are talking about what happened last night. Call me when you can." James frowned and opened the link Clara had sent. The video had already amassed thousands of views and comments. In it, Clara narrated the events of the previous night, showing clip after clip of taxis refusing to stop for James. Her voice was steady, but her words carried the weight of frustration and disbelief. "This is James Carter," Clara said in the video, "a veteran who served our country. Last night, in the heart of New York City, he couldn't get a taxi, simply because of the color of his skin." The comments section was a mix of outrage and denial. Some people expressed their anger at the blatant discrimination, while others tried to dismiss it as a coincidence. But one comment stood out to James. "I can't believe this is still happening in 2024. What can we do to help?" James sat back, his mind racing. He hadn't planned to draw attention to himself, but now that the spotlight was on him, he felt a responsibility to do something meaningful. He called Clara, who answered almost immediately. "James, I'm so glad you called," Clara said, her voice brimming with energy. "Have you seen the video? People are talking about it everywhere. News outlets are reaching out to me for interviews. They want to hear your story." James sighed. "I don't know, Clara. I'm not sure I'm the right person for this." "You are," Clara insisted. "You've lived this. People need to hear from you." After a long pause, James agreed. He decided to share his story, not just about the taxis, but about his experiences as a black man in America, both in and out of uniform. Over the next few days, he appeared on local news programs, podcasts, and even a national morning show. Each time he spoke with honesty and humility, sharing not just his frustration, but also his hope for change. As the story gained traction, people from all walks of life reached out to James. Some shared their own experiences with discrimination, while others offered words of support. A few even offered tangible help, like starting petitions or organizing events to raise awareness. One day, James received a call from an unexpected source. It was Mark Reynolds, the CEO of a major taxi company in New York. "Mr. Carter," Mark began, his voice measured, "I've seen the video, and I want to apologize for what happened to you. It's unacceptable, and we need to do better." James appreciated the gesture, but he wasn't interested in empty apologies. "What are you planning to do about it?" he asked. Mark paused. "We're implementing new training programs for our drivers, focusing on bias awareness. But I'd like to go further. If you're willing, I'd like to partner with you to create a larger initiative." James was skeptical but intrigued. "What kind of initiative?" "A campaign to promote inclusivity," Mark explained. "We'll work with local organizations, hold community events, and use our platform to spread awareness. Your voice would be a crucial part of this." James agreed to meet with Mark to discuss the details. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he felt a growing sense of purpose. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about creating a better future for others. In the months that followed, James threw himself into the campaign. He worked closely with Mark's team, as well as community leaders and activists. Together, they launched Ride Together, a citywide initiative aimed at combating discrimination in public transportation. The campaign included workshops for drivers, public service announcements, and partnerships with local schools to educate young people about the importance of diversity and inclusion. James became the face of the movement, sharing his story at events and inspiring others to join the cause. Meanwhile, Clara continued to document the journey, turning her initial video into a series that highlighted the progress being made. Her videos garnered millions of views, sparking similar initiatives in other cities. One evening, as James prepared to speak at a community event, he received a message from a young man named Ethan. Ethan was a cab driver who had seen James's story and decided to change his own approach. "I used to avoid picking up certain passengers," Ethan admitted, "but your story made me realize how wrong that was. I've changed, and I'm encouraging my friends to do the same. Thank you for opening my eyes." James read the message twice, a lump forming in his throat. This was why he had chosen to speak out, not for recognition, but for moments like this. As the event began, James stood before a crowd of hundreds. He looked out at the diverse faces before him, people of all ages, races, and backgrounds, and felt a sense of hope he hadn't felt in years. "Change doesn't happen overnight," James said, his voice steady, "but it starts with us, with our choices, our actions, and our willingness to stand up for what's right. Together we can create a world where everyone is treated with the respect they deserve." The audience erupted into applause, but James wasn't thinking about the cheers. He was thinking about the future, a future where no one would have to stand on a corner, invisible to the world because of the color of their skin. James's story became a beacon of hope, proving that even in the face of discrimination, change is possible. His journey showed the power of resilience, the importance of speaking out, and the impact one person can have when they refuse to stay silent. The moral of the story is simple, yet profound. Prejudice may be deeply ingrained, but compassion and understanding can break through even the toughest barriers. By standing together and challenging injustice, we can create a more inclusive and equitable world for everyone. That's the story, friends. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure sharing it with you all. Don't forget to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see the global reach of these stories. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories, tips, and tricks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.